Hey folks, Tom from the future. The present? Time has no meaning anymore. And yes, I am still sick, though possibly with a new sickness. It's hard to tell. Anyways, we are back this week with a whole episode on Alpha Flight number 61. It was supposed to be part of last week's episode, but life finds a way to get in the way. So instead of starting this episode as we usually do, we're going to skip the story so far and all that other jazz and just jump right in where we left off with Alpha Flight issue number 61. We'll be back in the groove for our next episode with a properly structured issue and a fantastic Roxxon/Reed Pop gag at some point, because these are the things Chris promises. Thanks for understanding and enjoy. We have another patently Bill Mantlo gear shift back into
Alpha Flight number 61, titled Inquisition! Cover date August 1988. Bill Mantlo is writer, Jim Lee is penciler, Al Milgram is inker, Janice Chiang is letterer, Bob Sharon is colorist, Carl Potts is editor, Tom DeFalco is editor-inquirer.
Boo this man. Boo this man.
And these credits are delivered in the iconic full-page style, vertically split between a team shot on the left and the credits bold as brass on the right. Creator names are in a lowercase bolded, soft and loopy's 80s font, while the job titles are in a smaller, hard, all-caps sans serif font to set them off. It is a great look. It's all black and white. It is immediately identifiable of this era of Bill Mantlo. I know we're in the closing issues of it, but it just nails down that Heather, Box, and Sasquatch are this era of Alpha Flight with the look and the everything. It's great. I bought a coffee mug with this on it because I loved it so much.
I also just wanted to add, in addition to this really clean, really strong presentation of the credits, directly to the left, it shows a sketch drawing of the Alpha Flight team. And while we've been saying that, and it is accurate, Alpha Flight is comprised of Vindicator, Sasquatch, and Box. However, here they've also added Purple Girl. And that's cool. I mean, she's on beta, but she's awesome. I do enjoy her quite a bit. I also really enjoy that it's Purple Girl and not fucking Mannequin. Because
yeah, but neither Laura nor Goblin. It's just Purple Girl is the one who's added in here. So, I guess they had high hopes for Kara.
I think reasonably as well. And frankly, the redesign she's getting, the aging she's getting under Lee's pencil makes it seem a little bit more reasonable that she could be a member of Alpha Flight at this point.
Oh, wait till she's in the swimsuit special in a couple of years, Tom.
For fuck's sakes.
I think she would be 17 at best in the book time by the time she's in that.
16. No more than 16.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
All right.
Get superheroes in the time of Instagram and OnlyFans would be a very different story, wouldn't it?
Thanks.
Yep. Glad to put that one in your head, buddy. On the cover, we have the whole team, including Nap and Goblin, bursting through a wall. It doesn't happen in the issue. It's just a very exciting, dramatic thing. It's not quite fine, but it's within spitting distance of fine.
It's definitely the kind of cover you put onto an issue wherein someone new to the book could read that issue and be fully caught up on where things are and how the status quo is about to change and what's going to be the driving force moving forward, which is what this issue is. This issue is tying up a lot of the threads that have been going on throughout the Mantlo run, kind of digging into somewhat interesting superhero-related ideas and concepts. It is so text-heavy, but it does absolutely give you an idea of this is what Alpha Flight is now, and this is how they're going to move forward, and here's the next complication they're going to have to deal with.
You know, when they said new format, more story, they weren't kidding. Like, I mean, it's this feels book. Different. Yeah, it's a book.
It's a book.
The story takes place in two different ways. There is one part of the story that is Heather and Madison on Parliament Hill being dragged in front of an inquiry from Parliament to explain what's been going on with Alpha. And then you have Sasquatch babysitting Beta Flight, and they're out on the streets of Ottawa trying to look inconspicuous, which, when you look like Wanda Lankowski, does not work very well.
Or when you're pushing a pram that has a goblin inside of it to mask her from the public, but, you know, is growling periodically.
Yeah, Kara has this, she has this purple overcoat, and instead of the classic fedora, she's got, like a Melania Trump hat, but is also purple, which one would think, she's dressed like the Joker from the movie. And she's already purple. Why is she wearing the double purple? Does she think it, like, neutralizes the purple? She looks like one of those colloidal silver Smurf-looking dudes, except purple.
I mean, I think in theory, you could say is just out of the corner of your eye, you see her and you think it's just the lighting and the color she's got on that's giving her that weird hue, maybe. But it's a striking look. It's solid.
You know, if she was less punk and more goth, I think that would be really cool for her.
I like the idea of Kara being like very fashionable and whatnot. I will, however, say she's still not that old, and
she's 13.
They're making her look like she's like in college at this point. You know, like that she's a contemporary of Talisman.
Yeah, interesting. Who also kind of came across as older than she was. But that's comics, everybody, right? In the inquiry, we have, like I said, Heather and Madison. They have a lawyer who's helping them out.
Sort of.
This A story here is meant to be a lot of exposition about what's been going on the team, but it does it in a way that's not just pure exposition. It's also pushing forward the story of the government saying, hey, we said we'd bankroll you, but you don't do what we say, and we don't want you to go start World War III when everybody can point to us as being your bosses and saying that we told you to start World War III. And Heather, you know, pulling the Avengers line of saying, we need to go where the bad guys are. Like, this is a lot of the stuff that you're going to see in Civil War later, just the early burblings of it coming through Canada because they step up and address their problems 20 years before us.
I have to tell you, I don't really love this scene very much. I feel like it's a lot of arguing past each other, and Heather very much gets up on her high horse from jump.
She blasts the damn table in front of her and isn't like hauled away in irons. Like, everything about this. Again, I've been in these meetings. You can't do that.
Well, I also don't think that you let either Heather or Madison show up with their superpowered costumes, because the box armor is directly behind Jeffries, and he does eventually merge into it. So now they have two of the
battle.
They have two of the three members of Alpha Flight that are really quite powerful, charged up in the middle of a heated conversation in Parliament. It
with
makes
cameras
no sense.
and reporters and like just people who are there. Because like if I was working in the building and I heard that was going on, I'd be like, boss, I'm going to go sit on this one just because I can. This sounds interesting. I would absolutely have been in that room.
Yeah.
But it would have been more fun, you're right, if they had made them leave their stuff behind and make Heather appear in like normal civilian clothes. It would have done a whole lot to undercut Alpha Flight's standing as, hey, we're superheroes, this is the shit that we do. Instead, they would have to show up as humans. And you would think that the parliamentarians would have understood the importance of that type of presentation when they're trying to undercut Alpha Flight's authority and say, no, you're people who are under the government's control, they're under the government's auspices, and you need to, you know, take your job more seriously. Instead, they let them present themselves as something else.
But on top of that, as Heather gets progressively more and more irate and uses her powers to blast a table, all that, if she were simply Heather Hudson, not Vindicator, her arguments might have carried a different kind of weight. Like they would have been perceived differently as a human who is thrust into this role, is doing her best to lead this team and protect Canada, and is arguing with a bunch of government functionaries over being spied on. Like, Vindicator being spied on is a very different thing than Heather Hudson being spied on. Like, there's just a lot of tactical errors here, but we're really going into it on this book.
Well, no, you're right that was maybe a tactical, not error, but, you know, plus for the parliamentarians to say, no, these aren't normal people. Look at how they present themselves. This is why we have to exert extraordinary control over them.
Like, Mrs. Hudson, have you showered in weeks? That suit absolutely reeks, my lady.
Yeah.
When was the last time Heather wasn't in the suit?
Well, and we could have gotten a cool scene. You remember when Iron Man 2, I think, when Tony's in the hearing with the Senate and he takes over all their screens and starts showing all the failed Hammer Tech things and whatnot and takes over the tech. Madison Jeffries could have done that. Like, that would have been really cool to say, no, you can take her suit away, but you can't take mine away. And I can still do this. So, yeah, there are things that could have been better, but it's a good framing device to really thrust us back into this sudden crash landing on Earth and the government. And, oh, yeah, there was a bunch of stuff going on before we got into that whole whatever we tried in space. Meanwhile, apparently the government has been keeping them under soft arrest at a hotel in Ottawa. And so the rest of the teams have taken the night off and gone and escaped from their hotel to wander around and try to be inconspicuous. And because this is a Marvel comic book, there's like a TV sales shop where there's a wall of TVs and they're all showing the Inquisition, and people are gathered on the streets watching and talking so that we get those street scenes. And it's so very grounded. And there's people who aren't on Alpha Flight or working for Department H who are talking throughout this book, because what we're getting is this man on the street perspective. It's Bill finally showing us what Canadian society thinks about Alpha Flight, instead of just Alpha Flight as we're superheroes and this is what we do, like something out of the Silver Age, you know? Mm-hmm. And that really helps ground it with Lee's art, because everybody looks, great and real. They're all distinct figures. Although one of these guys also looks like Senator Kelly. I guess he really likes drawing that guy.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty classic look for a government official, older white guy sort of deal.
And one of the parliamentarians has a bald head, but long Picard fringe. Like he looks like a hippie Picard. Feels kind of like he looks like, I don't know, Old Man Stang to me.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of that going on. Yeah. I also think that there is something reminiscent of the Burn Run happening with the on the streets scenes with the rest of the team, with basically Sasquatch plus Beta Flight wandering around. They actually end up in the bar that Puck used to bounce at, which is fun. I think that's actually a neat touch.
I felt like that wasn't in Ottawa, but I did not go back to look it up to verify.
I don't remember offhand. It could totally have been Ottawa, though. And it would make some sense that he would be closer by if he had just been bumped up to Alpha.
In issue number 1, it says, in a less fashionable neighborhood of Toronto. So am I incorrect? Are they in Toronto instead of Ottawa? Why would they have them separate? Well, I would separate the team if I had them under soft arrest.
I think we can assume that they are in Ottawa. It is not clearly stated in the comic, but it would be very odd for this hearing to be taking place anywhere but Ottawa.
Look, if I was Department H, I would try to get these weirdos separated from each other so they can't cook up any schemes.
I suppose
if you stick Sasquatch with the kids, it really limits the amount of nutso Sasquatch can go, because there's kids around, So I think they made the right choices here. You didn't want to put Wanda up on Parliament Hill,
Honestly, I think it's a better assumption that they are all in Ottawa, and Mantlo forgot. Mantlo forgot where Puck's bar was, etc. I don't think we need to, because also I don't see Alpha or Heather specifically allowing the team to be split up. I mean, they wouldn't even be having an inquisition at this point. They would be at war with the government of Canada.
Sasquatch and the kids duck into this bar in order to get some Cokes for the kids and a beer for Wanda. Which I think that's why I love this, because Wanda's like, oh, I'm babysitting today. I'm about to lose my job. I know nothing about my life. I need a beer. I need a moose head and a cheeseburger.
We will circle back to the Inquisition in a moment, but one of the things that they're really doing here throughout the story on the street is in many ways mirroring the conversation that's taking place in front of Parliament, where they don't have money. Like, the government was paying for Alpha Flight to exist, to function. They don't have salaries. They don't have jobs. They don't have access to funds. It is actually a very nice mirroring device, like, written in here, that while this high-minded conversation about freedom and what do we owe to a government, who gets to control whom, and et cetera, there's also the nuts and bolts of, but how do we live?
Well, and by walking into the bar, they continue, there's TVs on, and the discussion among the men on the street, for lack of a better term, is continuing to happen all around what Sasquatch and the kids are talking about. So that A story of the Inquisition is really everything that's happening here. We just finally get some real satisfying B story fill-in that makes all of that feel like it ties together, and it's really cool. So we get a nice little vignette of Laura and Goblin's parents seeing their kid on the news with Alpha Flight in all of this World War III talk and whatnot, and they are quite surprised to see their daughter in the company of this, and it makes you wonder, where did they think she was? Because she's been with them for a while.
Yeah, also, what's coming next? Is this something that's going to recur? There are a lot of potential storylines that are rolling out of this one issue.
Their anti-mutant stuff here could have opened the door to all sorts of cool stuff It doesn't. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. But it's showing that there are real connections to real people here on Earth. They're not just this superhero team that does what they do. This space adventure, like I've said before, felt a lot like some of the Hulk stuff that Mantlo did, where it's completely disconnected from any other connections around them. It's its own little world that we're living in for a while. The other scene I wanted to call out was while they're sitting in the bar, some dudes swarm up on Wanda because Wanda's a pretty noticeable lady, but one of them, as they're sweet talking to her, says, "Hey, you smell wet fur?" And it makes me wonder, does Wanda smell like wet fur all the time? Thinking like a Reddit thread where they say, what makes a person instantly unattractive even if everything else is great? And now my answer is, if they smell like wet fur all the time.
I'd be willing to bet that Wanda and Walt probably smelled like wet fur most of the time.
But to defend Wanda's honor, to his credit, Whitman Knapp gets up in the booth and says, "You clumsy maggots." And the dude turns to him and says, "Who you calling magnets?"
Yeah. No, there's, again, Mantlo, for Christ's sakes, dude, why couldn't we have something approaching this more of the time? The situation is diffused by Kara doing her thing and sending the men on their merry way.
And then the barmaid wants to get them the fuck out of her bar because it's more trouble than it's worth. Wanda goes to pay with a credit card, which the bar says, "Okay, we're a bar in 1988. We don't take plastic, and even if we did, you're not Walter Lankowski." Dun, dun, dun! Here we are, folks.
Switching back to the Inquisition, it's gone bad. It's going really, really poorly.
Well, it's also going poorly in the bar because as they don't have any money to pay, they click off the Inquisition, turn on the hockey game, and the whole bar turns their attention to, oh yeah, there's a purple girl here, and what is that thing in the baby carriage? The fuck kind of family is this? Yeah, we're not really getting into the substance of what the Inquisition discussion is because, like you said, it's a lot of just yelling over each other. It's not well scripted.
No, that's actually probably the weakest part of this issue. I think the Sasquatch and the kids is really strong. It really
Even though there's not a lot of it. It is really strong.
Right, because Wanda and the kids is actually giving us some narrative hooks. You have Laura and Goblin's parents appearing. Is that going to be something that we are going to contend with moving forward? Wanda is not Walter, and does she have access to funds? How is that going to function moving forward? So while the argument on Parliament Hill is sort of figuring out Alpha Flight's status and relationship to the Canadian government, the other story is actually talking about what Alpha Flight's going to be next in a much more interesting, much more meaningful way, I think.
So Wanda sasses out in order to get them out of their jam in the bar, and the stunned barmaid is there, and Sasquatch says, "Okay, 2 words, starts with an A," and she says, Alf. Right, Alfalfa Flight. Gonna call the RCMP? In Sasquatch form. I wouldn't call the cops on Sasquatch myself.
Yeah, I don't think that's a great idea.
The scared barmaid says that she always thought the Alpha Flight was a myth and they didn't actually exist. And Wanda says, "Flesh and blood, just like you, with hopes and fears and desires." Which is a weird thing to say to a random barmaid as she slips back into Wanda form. It really looked like she was like I've seen that movie, you know?
It was something. Also, the fact that she always has a unitard on when she turns back into Wanda is interesting.
Well, that's narrative convenience. Again, it would have been much funnier if John Byrne was doing this and she just was naked every time and had to think about it before she desassed, you know?
Maybe she doesn't fully desass and it's once again a He-Man situation.
But it's black and red. It doesn't have the same impact as Walt's, fuzzy trunks.
I didn't say it did. God.
Wanda realizes that they're broke, and they need to do something about that. But then Wanda also remembers that, literally, she says, "Wait a minute, I must be nuts. I'm rich." As Walter Lankowski, I was a very well-to-do young man even before I became an acclaimed biophysicist. I've got piles invested. Come on. And she runs into the bank and she goes and she fills out the deposit slip and is real cocky about it until the bank comes out and says, "Excuse me, ma'am, you're not Walter Lankowski." And the reality of the changes that Wanda has gone through, because she's just been hanging out, living that superhero life and doing all this superhero stuff and not interacting with the real world. This is where she meet crayons across the street here of realizing, oh no, I'm not just Walter in this different body. Nobody's going to let me live as Walter in this different body. Apparently I'm somebody else now. And they get kicked out of the bank. After she sasses out and tries to, threaten everybody.
A lot of sassing out happening here. Wanda's kind of going through it in this issue. Immediately after that scene, it cuts to various superheroes. We go to the Fantastic Four, where a comment is made that they're very lucky that the patents that Reed holds is what allows them to live their lifestyle.
And then we switch over to the West Coast Avengers, who say, we can certainly sympathize with Alpha's predicament. The U.S. government's given the Avengers our share of headaches. So, the team seem to be recognizing it.
Also, with the West Coast Avengers, we see Marina, who says nothing, is hanging out with Namor.
Oh, wait, no, these aren't the West Coast Avengers. What am I talking about? These are just the Avengers. These are the regular Avengers.
This would be a good moment for us to get into what Marina's been up to, but...
5 minutes, Turkish.
5 minutes, Turkish.
Then we cut over to the X-Men, who actually speak in this issue. And Colossus says, it seems that the U.S. is not the only one rent by anti-mutant hysteria.
I mean, as if they didn't know that. Come on, dude, please. Storm does ask Wolverine if he feels that he needs to get involved. To which Logan says that he's an X-Men Storm. I feel for Alpha, but now that the X-Men are dead, because this is while they're in Australia, Alpha's got to fight this battle alone. And I'm not going to try and do a Wolverine voice because I just...
Yeah. So
okay,
it's nice to see...
I'll do the voice. I'm an X-Men, Storm. I feel for Alpha. But now that the X-Men are dead, Alpha's got to fight this battle alone. What we don't see is a cutaway to Spider-Man checking this out either in that wall of TVs or in the Daily Beagle offices and simply muttering to himself, fucking knew they'd end up with war crimes. Spider-Man clocked
those assholes.
Spider-Man clocked how this was going to end for Alpha Flight a long time ago.
And he says to himself, those people are totally fucked up and have problems as big as mine, but at least they had paychecks for a while. Still better than me.
I don't think Peter's feeling too terribly bad for them, given his typical financial status.
Back on the snowy streets of Toronto, which is what I've decided to call the indeterminate place where Puck's bar exists, Wanda is still freaking out and realizes that there's one person left in this real non-superpowered world that she can turn to get access to her money that she made as Walter, and that would be her wife.
We will wrap up this episode with Wanda's conversation with Veronica, but we need to bring
we've got a bunch of Inquisition here.
We need to bring the Inquisition component to a bit of a close.
Because the one thing we haven't discussed is the fact that everybody thinks the Jade Dragon is part of Alpha Flight now, because they haven't talked to Alpha Flight in quite some time. Things have changed. And so there's that whole international everything hanging over this whole thing.
Having spent this issue pretty much making the same points back and forth, we pay your bills, you try to control us. Because we pay your bills, you need to listen to us. We fight for Canada to defend it. And look, there is a reasonable point that the government officials are making. You are wildly powerful. You represent Canada. We are helping to subsidize this project. We need some measure of control over this. Now, some of them are anti-superhero and anti-mutant bigots and are more concerned with a great replacement by these superpowered beings.
Oh, you said the GR words, Tom. Oof.
Sure did.
Ooh.
But others are trying to make a point about how a government organization would have to function. And to be frank, Heather wants none of any of it.
Either of those, yeah.
And look, Heather has a point about what they've done, how they fought, how so many of them have died to protect Canada, to preserve a way of life. But she's also completely intransigent on any notion that Alpha Flight, if it's going to be protecting Canada, needs to have some sort of interaction with the Canadian government. She's pretty much walked into this hearing with the intention of declaring Alpha Flight an independent entity.
Yeah, she's like, you can say whatever you want. That's fine. We just won't work for you anymore. And then the parliamentarians are saying, they're coming to replace us. They're going to take control of us. We have to stop them now before they take control of us. And Heather's like, we just want to fight the master one more time so that we can say we did it 3 times. Okay? Actually, they point out there weren't supervillains in Canada before Alpha Flight, which is a very, Batman spawning all the supervillains.
Yeah, and there's some really interesting ideas going on here. But back to the Jade Dragon, Daeguan is in the courtroom. I mean, I guess we can call it a courtroom. Probably isn't precisely that, but he's in the room, has been listening in, and after one of the MPs asks whether Alpha Flight will accept continued government funding with the precondition that the team take their marching orders from Ottawa, he transforms. He stands up and he makes a major statement about government control and what the government can order you to do, what they can order superpowered people to do, which is an interesting point. It's quickly or attempted to be rebutted by...
Oh, yeah, they say, that's not how we do things here, except that's literally what they are trying to do here.
Well, it becomes a question of what is Alpha Flight? Is Alpha Flight a military organization? Is it a branch? Is it under the purview of the Canadian government? Because if it is, then yeah, they do have to kind of take marching orders. And if it's not, then what does that mean for the Canadian government that they have a superpowered team operating within its borders, ostensibly, from what they claim? I mean, there are reasonable points here. And I don't know the history of comics well enough to say when these have appeared before, in what context, but...
It has popped up throughout Avengers a couple of times, but it never with this level of stakes to it. I don't know. It always felt like a plot contrivance when it happens to the Avengers, because it was 70s, you know?
Sure.
It was a different storytelling convention. This is a very modern feel of what this feels like, because like the X-Men touch on this stuff all the time, except without the government control angle. And this is taking that different frame, that weird liminal space that Alpha Flight exists in between the X-Men and the Avengers. This real world stuff with Parliament in this issue is showing where they exist that's different than these other teams, which is why it was great to see them pop up and really just hammer home and put a pin in it. This is where this team is. This is where this team is. This is where this team is. And they all empathize with Alpha, who is in between all of them.
And I think this is where this scene fails for me, beyond the fact that it's a lot of the same arguments being like repeated page after page, back and forth, is that it doesn't feel like there are stakes. Alpha Flight's not going to disband. The government's not going to get them under control again. So it's just political shouting and theater. And that really comes across, I think, from the very first interaction.
So Heather tells them to go pound sand dramatically. Box stands behind his leader lady lover and is there to follow her for whatever she's going through. And the stang looking motherfucker, his name is Lawton, apparently, tries to butter up Box and flatter him and say, hey, I think you'd make a better leader for Alpha Flight. Why don't you come do this for us and we'll put you in charge and we'll make all of this work, which frankly, for being like a 3-panel scene or something like that, is kind of what this has been set up with. Like we've joked before, this book has turned into Box and Friends, and Box is the leader. Like I could have turned the page and seen Box be like, well, I mean, if it's a way for us to do this, and this book fully becoming the Box book, it could have done that. Bill Mantlo, flip of the coin, flap of the butterfly wings. That's how this book would have changed. But it doesn't. He shakes hands with Lofton and crushes his hand in a way that surely should earn him some type of assault charge. And he says, if a robot could spit, Lawton, this one would, right in your lousy eye.
The art would suggest that Lawton no longer has a hand. He just has meaty pulp dangling off the end of his wrist. As Heather and Jeffries leave the room, Heather chats with the Jade Dragon, saying that if he decides to stay because his legal status is bizarre, if he decides to stay, they would be happy for him to join them. He indicates that he's undecided, but if he does stay, he'd be happy to join.
As Heather and Box leave the building, they are, have you ever had like a life-changing event in a big government building like that? They just lost their job. They lost all their funding. They have nothing. Like Heather had nothing before the Department H came in and bailed them out before this. So they're a little, punch drunk, shall we say? So they leave and Box says, so all bluffing aside, baby, what's the real scoop? Is Alpha done for or what?
Heather replies, well, I wasn't about to tell those honorable MPs, but the insurance money I received after Mac's death should tide us over short term, while Walter Lankowski's fortune should see that we're comfortably situated for the rest of our natural lives.
Son of a, you had an ace in the hole all along, baby. I love you.
Enough to marry me?
Is that a proposal?
Bet your crankcase it is. Ugh.
He picks her up, and we get a full splash page of Box rocketing into the sky, holding Heather in his arms with taking up about a third of the page. So, yeah, this relationship, this is the high point of it. Like, this is what Bill wanted. He wanted Heather with a tall white man, apparently. And he got her there, and now there's a wedding in the works, and then this relationship is simply going to disappear as Bill leaves the book, and it gets written out because this relationship never made any sense other than convenience. It's interesting how much this one issue is this tilting point between what we call the Mantlo era and what comes next. Because we're now in issue 61. His last issue is 66, which is its own standalone, like, trip of an issue. It's wild. So he's really only got, like, 4 more issues left of him directing the story. And so we're back, we're getting redirected, and we're leaving the book in a way that somebody else can do more with it than, just leaving them stranded in space.
Heather's brilliant plan is actually relatively strong. Having adequate funding to do what they like, to survive, to live, but continue to be Alpha Flight makes a ton of sense. And yeah, that would absolutely allow them to walk away from any kind of government control. However,
there is a slight hole in this plan, Heather, because I'm sure that Mac's insurance money is enough for about food for the next 3 weeks. That leaves you with Walt's fortune, and you don't have a Walt to access it.
As we've been discovering throughout the rest of the issue, Wanda and the kids, Wanda and the kids actually be like a great issue, like great miniseries on its own. Like Wanda just shepherding all these kids around in the Madcap adventures, like almost like a power pack. Like that would be one for.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that would be Wheezy, that would be a Wheezy. That would be really good. Wanda and the kids approach one of his many estates.
Well, it says they're in an Ottawa suburb. So apparently we are in Ottawa. However, this is a mansion. This is an estate. This is guard gate and setback and private lane and stuff. And they're walking up to it. They have no money for cash. How'd they get to the Ottawa suburb? Have they walked this whole way with Kara and Wanda in heels? Because I really don't see Wanda being prepared for that in the winter. Because she's still wearing her leotard and just like Kara's overcoat.
I haven't bothered to memorize Mannequin's various altars names, but isn't the future one able to tell? Highbrow. He's able to teleport, right?
Oh, yeah, but they didn't show it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's how they got her. Well, it wouldn't be hard. Come on, Bill. Anyway, so they walk up to the house. Wanda walks up, and Veronica, opens the door before they even knock. And Wanda's just like, hey, Roddy, it's me, baby. Can you imagine that, Tom? If your ex-spouse came back as the other gender and just walked up and started talking to you about old times.
Which is exactly how Wanda establishes that she ain't kidding that they were married, because she brings up a very specific incident.
She says, okay, if I'm dead, then how come I know all about that time you and I were photographed in our birthday suits at Biarritz and had to hawk the ankle bracelet I gave you to keep the pics out of the papers?
This panel, I love this panel, it has Veronica in the foreground, only half her face looking stunned. Like this is information that only Walter could possess. And over her shoulder, like peeking through the glass door. So it's actually even a muffled thing that she's yelling. She has to be yelling this for it to be heard through the glass.
Yeah, she's got her hands up by her mouth. Like, it's amazing how Wanda is selling this.
Such a good, and also it gets across Wanda's personality. It is almost a perfect panel. It is so strong. Like this book,
this issue showed us more Wanda than we've seen throughout like all the rest put together. And Wanda is really interesting. She's great.
Yep.
So much better than Walt.
So much better than Walt. Veronica realizes that this is in fact her husband, and that he's not dead now as Wanda. However, Veronica,
she likes money.
Really likes money, but more than that, she says, "You are Walter. I can see that now despite your outward alteration. I just experienced the same sensation of revulsion I used to feel before our divorce. No doubt about it, you are the same man I loved and loathed. Fortunately, although I believe you, no one else will. Therefore, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, Walter Lankowski is dead. Walter Langowski. She hated him so much she didn't say the K either. Walter Langowski is dead, and his fabulous fortune will remain mine.
And she slams the door, and we have just this one little slim panel of Wanda's shocked face. And this is where Jim Lee's art comes through, because it's a Jim Lee woman, you know, very well-formed mouth, very well-formed eyes. You know, this is a realistic drawing. It's not interpreted for a comic panel the way that some artists might do it. But just the shock and disappointment, all of that is right there on her face. Like, these couple of pages here that wrap it up between Wanda and Veronica are what make this issue great. It's a great issue. Even with the heavy-handedness of Heather's stuff.
I also just have to tell you, I get really angry. I'm finding myself getting really angry with Wanda being called Walt constantly. Like, it's complicated. I get it, but God, I hate Walt.
Wanda is shocked, upset, disappointed. Sasquatch is out and just yells, "Arrgh!" And the book ends. We had this grand plan. We got out from under control. We avoided assault charges, a lot of assault charges, some war crimes probably, but still nothing good happening for us. They showed us where Alpha Flight was in between these other main teams. I guess this is where they're showing us. This is where the Spider-Man panel comes in, Tom.
Yep.
Because now they have all these problems and they're broke. And if Spider-Man was watching this on TV, he'd be like, "How you like it, motherfucker?"
Looks like someone's got 99 problems.
And the rent is one.
The rent
number one.
The rent always number one. Always
Actually, they don't even have rent.
Which is a problem in Canada in the winter.
Well, one would think that Box can, box them up a base. Like, they were going to use Bedlam's base anyway. Like, go do that.
Go to a junkyard, absorb some mass, and make yourself a little tidy home.
You'd think that Madison running a junkyard would be a story concept that had been used at some point in time. He would have the most amazing junkyard. Like, whenever the Fantastic car gets too broken to fix, it goes into Madison's junkyard. Like, that's what he's got in his junkyard.
Mm. all the broken Alpha jets over the years.
Yeah. Actually, no, his junkyard is perfectly clean and empty. There is nothing in his junkyard, because once it comes into his junkyard, it ceases to be junk and gets turned into something that they can sell and finance their operations. Bill, I've solved your fucking problem here, okay?
We had an interesting issue this episode, reorienting the status quo for Alpha Flight vis-a-vis Earth and Canada. A lot of ground covered. A lot happened here.
Yeah, it is a tipping point issue that this is clearly, they're right. This is a new format for the book. And I'm curious where we're going. I'm glad that we're moving on this road trip again, even if the road trip ultimately ends in Dubuque or whatever, If
we were reading this as it was being published and had similar reactions to Mantlo's run, we in this moment know that he only has 4 actual issues left. A reader at the time would not know that. So it's an impossible thought experiment, but like, coming off of this issue, would we be like, "Oh my God, he's figuring it out," or we just somebody be like, "Well, he's going to whiplash this again." I mean,
as a former monthly comics buyer, yeah, the last 12 issues or so would have, probably more than that actually, would have really had me rethinking whether to keep this in my pull list. Mm-hmm. But every 3 or 4 issues, there's something interesting enough that happens that I will say, okay, I do want to see how that works out, because as you keep needling me, I'm a completionist. I have trouble giving up a book, especially one that I've been with from the beginning. And like, when I stopped buying the X-Men monthly, it was because there was a big changeover in the status quo. It was after the movies, and they bring in the Morrison run, and the Morrison run didn't work for me. It is not my definitive X-Men era, the way it is for some people. Different strokes for different folks. Wouldn't the world be boring if we were all the same? But this feels like the opening of a new era of Alpha Flight, and I would be very curious to see where this goes, and would at least pick up the next issue to find out what happens next. And that ultimately is the sign of a well-written comic book.
Right.
I can't believe I just said this, Tom.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, like I said, I felt like the Inquisition scenes were the weakest part of the book, but they were the engine to keep some of these elements moving forward.
And tying together the goofy shit that's been happening and explaining how we're going to be treating this in the future, that it's less about those things happened and those things are driving the plot and more about, okay, we're now moving to this thing driving the plot, and that's why this stuff has been happening.
I used the wrong metaphor there. The Inquisition scene was tidying up. It was wrapping up loose ends. It was reorienting things a bit. The engine was Wanda and the kids. That is what's moving this comic forward, and it promises to be something interesting. So, look, occasionally you worry that we get too harsh on it. And my point about treating it seriously is that we come at it from all of the angles that we have available to us, and we call balls and strikes. And when it's not very good, we say as much. This was good.
When this book is balls, we call it balls. Okay,
Jesus. But this issue was good. This issue was very effective. And again, if the cover is supposed to convey that this is a jumping on point, this was a pretty solid jumping on point and much better one than previous attempts at that. It's been a minute since I said this, but I'm really interested to check out the next issues. I think...
Okay, we need a music cue there or something, like, I don't know, angels, some type of celebration, something or other.
Because
it's a revelation, Tom.
Oh my God. Well, because there's no way that Wanda's fortune is just going to be dropped. It's a key component of Heather's plan. Wanda obviously feels and is correct that it belongs to her as much as it belongs to her.
It belongs
ex.
in a museum, Tom.
So I'm curious to see how this works out, how this plays out. Again, I haven't read these issues. I have a vague sense from some things Chris has said in the past about how some of this might go. But, I know it's the end of Mantlo's run, and I have a lot of feelings about how Mantlo has treated this book in different ways. But I'm encouraged to think that it actually might go out on if not a high note, a really interesting note. So that's something that I'm genuinely looking forward to is the next few issues. Also because then we're done with Mantlo, which is
what's coming up here is we get a Kara and Goblin adventure next issue, and then after that we have a one-off box adventure that's written by eventual Alpha Flight writer James Hudnall. That's the one with the Technomancer that we had a listener write us about, and then the next issue after that we are right back into the courtroom with Wanda and Veronica and talking about Walt's legal status.
That's weird pacing.
That is the really heavy episode about that stuff. And that is issue number 64. Then we get issue number 65. And then we get the final Bill Mantlo issue, which is, it's a trip, Tom. So there's interesting stuff happening here. It's just, unfortunately, we get Purple Girl and Goblin up next.
Yeah, that's really weird pacing. But you know what? Like, fine. We're getting there.
Well, we look forward to bringing that to you. And you know who looks forward to bringing this show to you, Tom?
Why Not Read Alpha Flight is brought to you by listeners like you who subscribe to our Patreon, and by the Roxxon Energy Corporation, whose legal counsel would really like us to stop bringing them into everything. Parent corporation of the Excelsior Embroidery Company, turning thread into thunder where every piece is stitched with style, sarcasm, and just a dash of superhuman flair. This week we're featuring new Alpha Flight patches. We've got Vindicator, Jeffries Box, White Sasquatch, and the Purple Girl, and they all look great. You can see these and hundreds more designs at excelsiorembroidery.etsy.com, where listeners of Why Not can use the coupon code WN503 to get 50% off when you order any 3 items from the Etsy store. When company's coming over, bring out the good towels, Excelsior.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight with Chris and Tom is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and deep beneath stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, edited by Tom Flynn, with additional voice work by Tom's age-appropriate daughter, not this episode, and cat noises courtesy of Teeny the Vocal Calico. Our theme song is O Canada by Five Iron Frenzy. New episodes are released, mostly, every other Monday at www.thewhynotpod.com and wherever you get your podcasts, where ratings and reviews are always welcome as a way to help our community grow. And we love hearing from our community. You can reach us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and by email at whynotehpod@gmail.com. That's whynotapod@gmail.com.
Bye, y'all.
See you next time.